Hi, welcome back to Spring CS170. For week 3, we're finishing up the topics for this week, which will be chapter 4. We've already covered chapter 3 and 5 in some earlier recordings. Um, I have started to just, taking feedback from people. I have started to post out the PDFs of these PowerPoints to include the notes. I mean, really, most of the stuff doesn't have um, too many notes, so it shouldn't matter either way. But if you go into where it says class materials for section 16 to 26, and you start to see the PDFs, starting with this week, you should start to see them with the notes. I'm going to try to go back and get the prior weeks when I get a chance. And let me see here. All right, good. Reason why I had to do that check there is because I have this WebEx running in the background for my office hours. I might have to jump to that if someone comes into my office hours. So anyway, yeah, speaking of office hours, it does help me if you know that you're gonna pop into my office hours. If you can just send me an email just so I can prepare and be ready. Sometimes, like I said, we have multiple people asking to join the office hours. I'd like to try to space out the time so they don't come in at the same time. Okay. So anyway, so we're off to chapter 4. So here we go. Um, so you may have noticed on the student schedule that chapter 4 actually spans over a couple of weeks, so this week and next week. So this week is just basically going into really the basic intro type of stuff. We'll actually start to actually do some real stuff more for next week. And all right, good. So no WebEx yet. So let's go back to here. So here we go. All right, again, similar to the other PowerPoints, you can see all of these different teaching points or things you should know. Okay, so try to make a note of this. When you take a look at the PDFs or whatever, you can mark it off and understand which ones you do know, which ones you don't know. Again, we put these things here for a reason. You're going to need to know these for the exam. Okay, uh, guarantee you, we're going to ask a question for each of these. These are all pretty important things that will be tested on the exam. So make sure you take notes on these, be able to refer back to them because it's going to be covered on the exam. Okay. Now, just a couple of quick terms and just a point about the editor. Okay. So HTML, this is what it stands for, Hypertext Markup Language. Okay. So you could think of it as almost like essentially like telling the web page how to format various things, right? So I have some text uh, or maybe a table, something like that, um, and I want to be able to play around with it, maybe emphasize certain things, maybe have links to other pages, um, things like that. So it's really kind of how the page should look like, right? That's how I would think of HTML. So HTML is just different bits of tags that will tell the page how to represent whatever it is. Usually it's text, right? But it could be like a table or something like that, right? And we're going to get into real examples of that, okay? Now, you can imagine like when you play around with it at the beginning, you can say, oh yeah, I can put a tag here to make this bold or whatever. That's cool, right? But you can imagine when you start to do this with like a company website or a very large amount of data, that could be pretty cumbersome, right? And if you're doing this, let's say at a company and you have a whole bunch of pages at your company, but you want them to all look kind of like the same, right? Like similar look and feel, right? Similar to like, when you looked at the applications, right? So people like it when, if you're at a particular company, all of the pages look similar, they look professional and all that kind of stuff. So that's why you get into these things called cascade styling sheets, right? So you kind of have these things set up and then people kind of refer to it it's almost like a library of things, right? So it's available to you. You say, okay, every time you want to put in this section, it's going to look like this. It's going to look the same for everybody, right? Um, and people don't have to do it from scratch, right? So it saves people time. It gives you a common look and feel across many different pages. Okay, so that's the purpose of CSS or Cascade Styling Sheets. Um, and so, yeah, you know, you have websites. It can also be for emails, for documents, newsletters, and whatnot, right? So you can see it's a similar, again, similar look and feel, right? So to get certain types of formatting, bold, font size, fonts, all that, um, you'll be able to do this with HTML, okay? And um, HTML is something that runs across many different things. So you can have it on the Safari browser, let's say, for Apple stuff. You can do it on Chrome. You can do it on Firefox, Explorer, all that. So it goes across different browsers, different platforms or OSs. Um, you have things like page ranking. You remember we talked about page ranking in the last video, right? So there's different bits of information in there, metadata, which helps with page ranking. Um, we talked about being mobile friendly, right? So mobile friendly helps your page ranking with Google, let's say. How do you do video? How do you do pictures? Things like geolocation, UX. We know about UX. We asked about that for your extra credit, right? Um, and uh, just very recently, they pretty much declared the end of Flash, right? So it's all of this kind of stuff that comes into play with HTML5, okay? Frankly, some of the stuff was kind of even in the older versions of HTML, right? But HTML5 is essentially the latest and greatest, okay? Um, Now, I put this HTML5 editor.net. Now, I know a lot of your TAs, everybody's got like all kinds, there's a gazillion different types of editors, right? So, I happen to use this HTML5 editor .net for this class just because it's something that you could use from your browser, so you don't have to download it to your computer. Let me just go here really quick. Where am I here? HTML5 editor. Okay, so the thing I like about this is you have your usual stuff where you have the different colors, you can kind of show if something's missing on a tag, and then when you type it, you can see it right away. So as I type something here, this is, oops, where am I? Test, and you can see on the right hand side it automatically pops up. So as you're playing around with the stuff here on the left hand side, you automatically see it rendered here. Okay, now you can actually do stuff on this side and it will kind of go back over to this side. So let me do this and let me do that. Okay, so you can see it kind of did that, right? You see where I did this paragraph as a test and I set this to be strong. I didn't maybe necessarily want to do it that way, so it's not perfect, right? I actually wanted to have this as a B for bold, right? Like that, and you can see it wiped out all my other stuff here too, right? So although you can do stuff on the right hand side and it will kind of go back to here, number one, it's not perfect, and number two, it blows away your other stuff, which I don't really like. So if you're gonna do this, you can do this, but use it sparingly because of those two things I just said. Okay, so me personally, I prefer to do this, but the TAs or whatever, they'll probably give you one of the other ones that you have to download, which is fine. The ones you download probably more powerful and all that kind of stuff. But I really kind of think for your, and this is cool. Once you get in here, you can see like all this different stuff here. It's almost like an example for all these different things you can do here, right? You can see I have table and all that kind of stuff here, right? So anyway, that's another thing when you go in here. But anyway, I digress. Like I said, the TAs are going to cover different things, and sometimes it works fine. Sometimes you can download. There's a version for Mac. There's a version for PC and whatnot. Um, and maybe it saves the file in a nice way and whatever. You know, that's okay. Um, I'm not going to go into it in this class, but when you go over with your TAs, the TAs are going to be going through this stuff with you. Like I said, there's a million types of editors, so do whichever one you like. Just happens I kind of like this HTML5 editor.net. I think it's straightforward. It kind of shows left and right the code and what it renders to, um, and it's on the browser, so it doesn't matter whether you're running a Mac or PC or whatever, right? But to each their own. But one thing I will say is, no matter whether you're running on Mac or you're running on PC, make sure you talk to your TAs if you don't really understand this, because I know a lot of people have problems with this. Is uh, you can't just like save the file willy-nilly, right? So the HTML file has to end with the right extension, right? So you can edit it, do whatever into whatever editor you're going to use, but make sure that you do save the file with the right extension. And the thing is, with Windows, for example, I think actually with the Mac also, um, there are settings on there that you don't necessarily see the extension, right? So you're gonna have to go in there uh, and do a change in the properties so that you can see the extension, the file extension. So just to make sure that you're ending with the right extension when you save the file. Depending on your setup, I've seen people, it happens automatically for them. They're able to like edit, save, and do whatever, and they don't really care what the extension is. The editor and everything is able to sort things out for them. But I've seen other people that have a lot of problems with that, and it's a little bit frustrating, a little bit annoying. So if you're not quite clear on your situation, like how to save the file onto your local drive, and be able to refer it as an HTML page, make sure you talk to your TAs, right? Go to their lab hours or during the TA session, send them an email or something, and ask them to kind of show you either on a PC or on a Mac how to represent it properly. Okay, so that's my suggestion. I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to really go through this because I have like a whole bunch of stuff I have to try to cover with the lecture. But when you practically start to edit your pages, that's something you should try and know if you don't have it working quite right. It could be a source of frustration. So do talk to your TA about that. Okay, so enough time spent on that. So anyway, this is my recommendation, just for you to play around with the HTML stuff. Figure out how to save it as HTML file so you can do what you need for your homework assignments. Okay. Anyway, so a couple of different things here. I'm not going to really spend a whole bunch of time here because we're going to go into more details as we scroll through. But note these couple of different things, right? There's the page structure. There's going to be some required elements here. There's this idea of white space, right? So I can put in stuff white space here, but it's not really white space, right? So I might think, oh, I did this. It's going to space like this. It's going to look like this when I actually render the HTML page. It's not, right? It's going to kind of squish everything in. So to actually do certain things, like to make a new line or whatever, you actually have to put in a tag to make it go to a new line. Okay. And actually, let me pause for a second. So I kind of jumped right into doing HTML, and I know a lot of people, they sent me feedback and they say, oh, okay, I'm learning about technology, how to apply it for business application. You want to see how those things hang together, right? So um, before I go into more of these mechanics and details, I think I'll have to split this into a couple lectures, but let me talk about the why. So you probably all of you know, right? Like with the way the internet is right now, and as we said, the HTML stuff applies not just to doing web pages, although that's what typically people think about. There's a lot of different like internal stuff. If I work for a large corporation, uh, there's going to be any number of things where people are trying to share knowledge. Um, they're trying to interact with each other. Um, you know, in the old days, I used to be able to type something, not really pretty, right, and just kind of send it out as a texting, right? But these days, given where technology is with the different types of publishers and formatting, you know, it's like an arms race. You got to keep up with it, right? So, a lot of stuff that you take for granted is just a given. You need to present your information in a nice looking way. You got to have like things like videos and pictures and stuff like that. Just plain text doesn't cut it anymore. So a lot of these different things, chances are you'll have some sort of package that will do a lot of these things for you automatically, or make it a lot easier for you than you just doing HTML. But sometimes these things are not fully functional. They don't do everything, right? It's almost like I was talking before about abstraction, where you don't understand some of the details, and that's fine. You can get the job done, right? But if you want to do, certain types of like tweaks, you want performance enhancement, or you want to get something just right, exactly the way you want it, not just how, Microsoft or someone else tells you like they think looks right. That's where you have to like open things up, look at the code yourself, and tweak it yourself, right, to customize it, right? Now, if you're not working for a large company, maybe you're doing like, uh, your own thing at home, right? Maybe you're working from home as a freelancer. Maybe you're doing e-commerce. Maybe you're doing, like a blog. You're, a YouTuber, whatever, right? Like you probably want to have some understanding, again, how to customize and tweak things. It's very easy for you to set up an e-commerce site and just take it as packaged up from someone else, right? Someone else gives you a standard template, you just drag and drop stuff, and then boom, you're ready to go, right? But then you look like everybody else, right? You don't have any ability to kind of tweak things and add your little special flair to it or whatever. Um, and that's why you need to have some understanding of these type of details, right? Because one day maybe you want to set up your e-commerce site and you want it to stand out compared to everybody else's e-commerce site, and you're going to get into things like this. Maybe you're doing some corporate communications, and again, you want to add your special flair to it. You want to edit something. You want to come up with a fancy formatting, whatever. It's within your control. You don't have to take the default templates that are provided to you from whoever, right? So I'm not going to spend a gazillion, amount of words on this, but hopefully what I just told you gives you some sort of context about the application of HTML, either if you're going as an entrepreneur or you're working on a corporate side. So I won't spend more time on that. I'll just keep on moving, okay? So describing a web page, okay? Again, HTML, and so basically, it's this idea where you have content, and then how do you present the content? Um, so when you kind of say, well, okay, I want it to look like X, Y, and Z, uh, whatnot. It's almost like to the point where um, you have the text. Let's say it's text. Forget about any videos or anything like that. Let's say it's just text, and you know you want to do bold, you want to do whatever to make it look good, and you kind of come up with a finished product, like in the old days with like Microsoft Word or something. You would send that because you did all those different types of formatting and whatnot. um, you you made it fat. You put a lot of information in there, and then you kind of send that around. In this case, we're talking about like web servers that are going to have to render all of these pages here, right? Now, but if I have the content and I have directions to something else, like a standard environment or a standard ecosystem that understands when you tell it to make something bold, or you tell it to do certain types of formatting, that the browser or that ecosystem knows how to render it, then you can send a lot less information, okay? Because it's almost like you distribute the load of how to do the work, right? So instead of you kind of doing everything in one shot at one place, and the other, let's say the server is dumb, all it does is just take whatever you give it and just put it up. That entails sending a lot of information over the wire, or the logic has to go somewhere, right? Um, so, but with certain types of standards, let's say understanding HTML, so all the browsers know how to do HTML or recognize HTML, then all you have to worry about is sending the content and telling it on the other side when you get to the server, saying, hey, this is what I want you to do, and then it knows how to do it, right? So it ends up that you're uh, sending less information over the wire, okay, if that makes sense, okay? Um, and um, the servers themselves, these are just machines, right? Or it could be on the cloud, right? Um, you know, they're not really storing the information. It's dynamic, right? I can send a page, I can update things, I can stream it, and the machines themselves just take it in and then they just render it. They just show it, okay? So that's kind of how this works. This is kind of what you're looking at when you're saying what's the benefits of having something like this with HTML, okay? All right, so how does this work? So you get formatting with these tags. The tags is pretty much what it is, right? And you know, basically you have this less than sign and the greater than sign, and then you have something in between. Okay, as it says here, a lot of times they come in pairs. Okay, so in this case, you have title, right, and a title and then slash title here. Okay, so this is not a formatting thing per se. This is kind of like when you put this on here, when you have your tabs across the top of your browser, on those little tab thingies, you're going to have, let's say, web basics in this case. Okay, so that's what it kind of clips up there. Um, you know, from a web crawler standpoint, again, that's another piece of information that the web crawler will take to understand what is this page about. Okay, um, and yeah, so element is like that, like title. Okay, so element, the content between the tags. Okay. Okay, so uh, these are the different things that you're gonna see for um, most of the pages. Um, you can get away with probably not putting in some of these things, but it's helpful to have it. Um, so, and sometimes, like depending which version of HTML you're using, it will behave differently. So it's better just to be explicit, right? You might say, oh yeah, I'm using HTML5, so it doesn't matter. I don't need to put the tag in. Yeah, but it may not be the case for whatever reason. It might be some weird thing going on. So, why not just be explicit and just put all the tags in there, okay? So you have this here, just basically saying this is HTML, okay? And then you have basically every HTML doc is going to have this top and bottom tag, says HTML, okay? Um, so this, well, this goes into the metadata part. Um, and this says, you remember before we talked about UTF-8, right? So that's the encoding as opposed to, let's say, ASCII, right? So you get a wider character set, so you're able to support like non-English type of character sets, let's say. Again, I don't put it there. It's probably not fine, like 99% of the time or something like that. But, just to be safe, just put it in there. Um, so this is within the head part, right? And then this is the body. This is the actual stuff that you're going to be doing the, whatever, like your text or something like that, right? That's your body here, okay? So I'm going to pause here. I'm going to cut another video to go into details about each of these different sections here. Okay, thank you.